All right, let's talk about a creature you think you know. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on the troll.
So let's start with a really simple question. What is a troll? Well, turns out that's surprisingly hard to answer. Why? Because trolls, you could say, have a major identity crisis. I mean, think about it. In pop culture, you've got everything from those hulking, gray-skinned monsters in Lord of the Rings, all the way to the cute and kind of bumbling Moomins from Scandinavian folklore. Two totally different ends of the spectrum.
And it doesn't stop there. There are also those wild-haired dam trolls that have been popular, since the 60s. And then you've got the modern version, the internet troll, whose only job, it seems, is to ruin your day.
So how can one name cover so many completely different things? Where did this all come from? Well, to find the answer, we have to look past all the modern fiction. We've got to dig into a really fascinating and kind of speculative theory from our deep, deep past.
Okay, so let's get into it. This whole thing starts with a really tantalizing what-if question, one that connects ancient mythology to modern anthropology.
What if trolls aren't just myths? What if they're a faint cultural memory of another kind of human? I'm talking about the idea that trolls might be a vestigial memory, like a cultural echo of our ancestors' encounters with Neanderthals. Now here's where it gets really interesting. When you start comparing the descriptions, they really overlap. Folkloric trolls and what science tells us about Neanderthals, well, they share a surprising number of key traits.
Okay, so check this out. Both are often described as living in caves, being heavy-boned and built for the cold. But it's not just about how they looked. We now know Neanderthals had the FOXP2 gene, which is absolutely crucial for speech. So this idea that they were just silent brutes? Probably not true.
Look, it's a super compelling idea, right? But we have to be honest, it's still speculative. There's no physical proof tying them together. But this whole idea of a real troll, a physical being, that actually leads us to a very real, very mysterious object from history.
And this is where our story takes a turn, moving away from abstract theory and diving headfirst into a tangible, physical mystery.
Let's go back to the 18th century. In Sweden, the Gotha Court of Appeal had this magic chamber. It was basically a collection of artifacts confiscated from all sorts of criminal trials involving sorcery.
And right at the heart of this collection was this one really peculiar object. It was a small piece of bone, and it was intricately carved to look just like a tiny human skull.
Now this little skull is where things get really wild, because this one object got pulled into two completely different, totally competing national stories. So, story number one. This one was pushed by 19th century liberals. They basically said, look at this thing. It's a relic of a dark, superstitious past that we, as a modern, rational society, have thankfully overcome. So it was all about progress, right? The whole point was to celebrate how far society had come, from dark magic to the light of reason.
But then, a totally new story started to emerge, and this one was driven by a rising tide of nationalism.
An ethnologist named Gunnar Olof Hiltian Cavalius came along and said, whoa, hold on, this isn't about witchcraft. He argued it was actually a religious object, an idol, from a foreign, indigenous people that he literally called trolls.
So you've got two powerful stories, a witch's tool, a troll's idol. Both of them are using the exact same object as their proof. But what if they're both wrong? What if the truth is something else entirely? Yeah, you guessed it. It turns out both stories were completely wrong. Get ready for this, because newly uncovered archival evidence finally reveals the true and honestly way more interesting story of this little skull. The skull didn't belong to a witch. It didn't belong to a troll. Court records from 1709 show it was confiscated from a Romani woman named Anna Maria Adamsdotter, and she was a very clever woman who was using it for business.
See, this object is actually the oldest known example of something called a bengoro. That's a Romani term for little figurines like this, a little devil or a little corpse. But here's the key. It wasn't an idol for worship. It was a prop for a performance. And Anna Maria actually explained one of her tricks in court. It was this brilliant bit of sleight of hand. She'd ask a superstitious farmer, say, to hold an egg. Then she'd secretly palm the little skull, mutter some magic words over the egg, and smash it, revealing the devil that was supposedly hiding inside.
And then, for a price, of course, she'd offer to lift the curse.
And that's the real heart of the matter, isn't it? She wasn't practicing magic. She was a performer, an entrepreneur. The skull was never an object of belief for her. It was just a clever tool she used to exploit the superstitions of others, basically for survival.
So the skull's real history, this incredible story of a marginalized woman's ingenuity and survival, it was just erased. It got replaced by these big, dramatic legends of witches and trolls. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Whose stories get told, and whose get hidden in plain sight? What other truths might be hiding right behind the myths we all think we know?